Hi, I'm Kate Shamarani, natural nurse in a toxic world, co-founder of the British Nursing Alliance and nurse and health advisor on Sons of Liberty Radio USA on a Saturday at 1 p.m. Now, I've just had a conversation with a doctor and he's told me 3 very harrowing stories and he's afraid to talk about it publicly while I'm not. But before I do that, I just want to go through a few things to remind everybody. On April 29th, 2020, doctors were given the authority to remove all essential medication, food and water from patients who could not reach their desired life goals, who were critical frailty score 6 through 9. That might be somebody who needed help with washing and dressing, someone who'd had a stroke, maybe someone that was blind. They were also trying to pass a law retrospectively to the beginning of the pandemic, which would protect doctors and nurses from criminal charges. They were denied. Let that sink in, doctors and nurses. It was denied. So you can and will face trial. Now, our NHS, we're told, is the envy of the world. That's why no other country emulates it. And actually, if you look at the survival times, the treatments available and the waiting times, we fare on a par with an Eastern Bloc country. We rank in the lowest third in the world. So it's the sacred cow that really does need to be culled. The Pfizer documents, which were ordered to be released, they wanted to keep them secret for 75 years, showed that 90% of those pregnant women that were injected with the Pfizer COVID shot lost their babies. 90%. We know that an Australian doctor has just stated that the death rate in miscarriages, the death rates of the babies, the unborn, which would typically be 5% to 16%. Well, now he's seeing an increase of 73%, I believe it is, in miscarriage. It's remarkable. My first job was in a gynecology ward. I would have noticed that, a huge increase in miscarriage. Also death of the neonate shortly after the baby's born, stillborn. In 2020, a midwife came to me from Burnley and she said that they'd had 7 babies born one day and 3 another day in 1 week, all stillborn, very little fluid. I can tell you right now that 2.4 gigahertz, 2.45 and 5.8 gigahertz, that's your Wi-Fi, has a profound effect on water. And if you look at what we're mostly made up of, and the hospitals are full of this, and soon they're going to be even higher, as with 5G. And they put an extra transmitter in all the classrooms. And each of these can service about 300 computers, laptops, and there's only about 25, 30 kids in the school. Keep all this in the forefront of your mind. So let me go back to what this doctor said. So during the first lockdown, he was told to go out to the homes of the elderly and he was to fill in a form to determine if that person's life was worth living. Let me say that again. To fill in a form to determine whether that person's life was worth living, that patient. And it's called an escalation plan. Now that plan stayed with that patient. It would go to the paramedics, it would go into the hospital. So if that patient was sick, based on that, was their life worth living, the escalation plan, that would determine what treatment they would get. It's a license to kill. He then told me about a patient, 70 years old, that came in and they had a fever and a tachycardia, and he treated them with some antibiotics and they were absolutely fine. 5 days later, he was to discover that that patient had died and a senior doctor had put a syringe driver up on that patient. That senior doctor was a Freemason. That same doctor told a patient to go to bed that had fallen down the stairs, an elderly patient, with paracetamol. That patient was then admitted later by another doctor with fractured vertebra in the neck, fractured vertebra in the upper back, and a torn retina. I can't imagine what doctor would tell an elderly person who's just fallen all the way down the stairs to just go to bed with a paracetamol. But it was the same Freemason who put the syringe driver up. Now, another doctor It was pointed out to that doctor that the birth rates in this area had dramatically dropped. And this doctor said, it's a little bit of depopulation. He was also a Freemason. It's just the elderly. Doesn't really matter, does it, nurses? You're seeing it. It's just the elderly. It's just the Jews. It's just the disabled. It's just the disabled children. It's just the gypsies. It's just those with psychiatric illness. Just put do not resuscitate on them. It's just the dissidents, Christians, Jehovah's Witnesses, just the homosexuals. It's just the blacks. It's just the Russian prisoners, Polish prisoners. Tell me when a life is worth a life to you. We already know what's going on with terminations. My first ward, we used to do them. I'm very much pro-life. It's you, doctors and nurses, that are pulling the trigger on those shots, those bioweapons. You are injecting people with them. And I've already said on one of my videos how 2 of you went into the home of a gentleman receiving his end-of-life care with a syringe driver, semi-conscious, 48 hours before he died, and you gave him his booster. Heroes, aren't you? I don't think so. I have another word for you. Begins with M. Now, the good thing is that when you did these shots, you had to put your name down. So there's a paper trail. And morphine and midazolam, you have to put your name down. It's a controlled drug, morphine. So there's a paper trail for all of this. The syringe driver, every doctor that's attended. There's a paper trail. Many of you have already had lots of vaccines. So you're seeing the deaths. You're seeing that fall of all of their fighter cells. You're seeing it all. Because many of you are coming and telling me. You're seeing patients, young patients, having their 3rd round of antibiotics because they just can't clear their chest infections. You're seeing this. You're seeing it all. We know that all the tenders that have gone out to have the babies cremated so that we don't go to the undertakers. It goes straight from the hospitals to the crematorium. You're seeing it. All of you nurses and doctors are seeing it, or you're participating in it. Now, in Nuremberg, there was 8 tons of evidence, 900 pages. Many of those nurses went to prison. Many of them went to prison for life, and many of them hung, and doctors. Now, the top scientists, like the one, Schwann, who was looking at how the radar affected blood and water, he was spirited out under Operation Paperclip, 1,600 of them to America. Lots went to Russia. I'm sure lots came to the UK. So who's going to take the rap? You are. You doctors and nurses. They don't need you. You think that it was the doctors and nurses that thought up about doing a dance routine? That would have been somebody up in a high-up think tank. Probably a ward that was no longer being used, and people that were just actors. And then you all followed, thinking the public would like it. The public were disgusted because they saw you. Empty wards, lots of you overweight, not looking the pillar of health at all, and fighting over your food parcels. Yep, lots of people told me, getting your freebies everywhere. And the public saw you, and they're disgusted. And now you want a pay rise. Well, unfortunately, who to blame is going to sit at your door. So doctors like this, you Freemasons that are really low down the Freemason food chain, and you nurses that are still doing it and getting paid extra for working at vaccine centres at the weekend, you're going to take the rap for this, literally. And the laws haven't changed, incidentally, the laws for genocide under the Rome Statute. They haven't changed. So go read those 900 pages of the medical trials. I was just doing my job. I didn't want to upset my boss. I had a family to feed. The NMC won't be behind you. the Norwegian Union or the Royal College of Nursing. Nobody will. You're going to be standing in there on your own, if you're still standing. And I hope these doctors do. So you think on that. What is life worth to you? How many deaths are too many? Because when they start bringing out the little white coffins, you're going to see a whole different thing with the wailing of the mothers, because that's stabbing right into the heart when you take the children. When you take the children's lives. Now ask yourself, why did you become a nurse or a doctor? Was it a vocation? Was it the love of your fellow man? If we're lucky, if we're really lucky, we grow old. It's a luxury. We don't die in an accident. We don't die of disease. Now, we got to manage to get through the hospitals and the nursing homes. Because the very people that we trusted to take care of us are killing us. If you're lucky, you'll get old. Keep your loved ones close. Take care of your elderly. Take care of your elderly relatives. Because murder is afoot.
Hello, it's me. You know, indoctrination started while we were still naive. Programming our beliefs. And that inertia is the reason we don't feel the earth spinning. Hello, can you hear me? Did you ever stop to question the confession of gravity as a theory? Funny thing, force alone can be explained with buoyancy and density. The sun is closer than what they've told us, not 90 million miles away. Hello from the inside. I'm here to tell you not to lie. And there never was a space probe, and those planets you've left so wandering stars. Operation Fishbowl. Hello, how are you? Did you get a chance to join Flat Earth and Globe discussion group to discover all the truth? How the sun, the moon, the stars are all revolving around you. There's no more secret. The earth is stationary. It is fixed, unmovable. Hello from the brighter side. They fooled you with that CGI. Sending rockets into the sea, and they're faking that life. ISS
You're not gonna like this one, nah, not at first. You're gonna learn to though, you're gonna learn a lot, check it. If you believe we put a man on the moon, you probably believe we're gonna go to Mars too. Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that's just something now we can't do. Try and leave low Earth orbit, see what happens to you as you turn into soup in your spaceman suit. What? Did you forget about the Van Allen bell? And that is filled with radiation, yo, does that ring a bell? 4,000 degrees, that sounds hotter than hell. Man, you think if people went through there, they just melt, but NASA's already been through it. There's a lie they tell that we believe in for so long, so we might as well keep up the charade instead of breaking these chains, and let the ones on top continue to control our brains. Yo, let them do what they want with the heart and money. $19 billion for cartoons, that's kinda funny. Yeah, that's just common sense to me. $19 billion on some cartoons, on some CGI bullshit. That's just me though. Look into it a little bit, you'd be surprised if that's the right word for it. If you think the moon can be terraformed, you're wrong, and I'ma have to be the one informing ya that the moon isn't exactly as it appears. Like when it's waxing or waning, doesn't it seem clear? In the daylight, supposed craters turn blue, and there are even times you see a star straight through. Like it isn't a solid ball just spinning around, like it isn't a rock that's magically pulled down. You know our orbit, where gravity's so strong doesn't absorb it. Moon affects the tides, but other bodies of water ignore it, and it's reflecting light coming from the sun, but moonlight's colder than moon shade. Explain that one. Now feel free to stay locked up inside your bubble and keep believing those lies that don't love you, and they'll tell you that the earth's shaped like a pear. Look up Atlantic conspiracies if you dare. Yeah, I'm not gonna say anything that's gonna change your mind, right? I'm just gonna plant a seed. Yeah, you've been lied to, you've been deceived. Yeah,
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
Tous les non-vaccinés qui contaminent nous autres, les vaccinés, donc sains, parce que nous sommes sains, donc sains. Allez, ce soir je sors, je vous te dire que ça va déglinguer. Putain, quand même, ça, j'ai l'impression qu'il y a, hein? Non, je sais pas, ah,